Ladies and gentlemen, namaskar. My name is Matthew Joji from the International Justice Mission. The Maharashtra State Commission for the Protection of Child Rights and International Justice Mission is organizing this webinar to discuss the implementation of strategic policies to protect children from online sexual exploitation. We believe by the end of this webinar, each one of us here will be empowered with more information and knowledge on how to combat this heinous crime at an important time like this. Data from the last few weeks and few months have all indicated that there has been a considerable rise in the crimes against children that are being perpetrated in the online, and it has grown to be a concern for all of us. And we believe this webinar is timed at the right time for us to come together, understand from the experts the mechanics of how to deal with this crime. In the 15 minutes of this webinar, we will have opening remarks by the hosts and leaders from both the Commission and International Justice Mission, after which we will dive into the subject. And of course, that session will be led by the eminent experts who are here. And before we end the session this evening, we will have a time of question and answer. Please use the question and answer box that you can find below to pose your questions and post it up for each of the speakers as you may think right, or the domains or subjects that you may be interested to get answers on. If you encounter any technical problems, please contact the number you might have come across through in the flyer or in the forward message that you would have received. Our backend team will support you through the technical issues. With that, I would like to invite Ms. Melissa Walwakar, the Director of Operations from International Justice Mission, Mumbai, to start us off with her opening remarks for this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Good evening. Respected Honorable Minister Advocate Yashomati Thakur, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Shri Praveen Ghoge, Chairperson, Maharashtra State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, Ms. Seema Vyas, IAS Member Secretary, Maharashtra State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, distinguished speakers on our webinar today, members of state commissions from across the country, members of the Department of Women and Child Development, respected members of judiciary, law enforcement, academia, and my fellow members from the social service sector. It is my deep privilege to welcome each and every one of you to the national webinar on implementation of strategic policies to protect children from online sexual abuse, a collaborative effort of the Maharashtra State Commission for Protection of Child Rights and International Justice Mission. International Justice Mission is an anti-human trafficking organization that is dedicated to protecting the poor from violence and exploitation. Over the past 20 years, we have partnered with the central and state government and the justice system to rescue minor children from sex trafficking, pursuing convictions for the perpetrators, and building capacity to strengthen the justice system's response to the crime. With the advancement of technology, we have seen that the use of digital devices and social media have become a part and parcel of everybody's life. According to a recent 2019 report, an estimated 60 million children in India aged between 5 and 11 years access the internet, constituting 15% of the total number of active internet users. This implies that it is the need of the hour to create a safe environment for children online, like we have tried to create one in the physical world. The complexities involved in the virtual world are many. With each passing day, the perpetrators of this heinous crime develop new means to inflict irreparable wounds on innocent children. We must not only be at pace with the ever-changing technology, but a step ahead to ensure that such acts do not take place in the virtual world. This webinar sees participation of people from diverse backgrounds, each bringing their unique skill set to the table. Let us use this webinar to discuss, deliberate, and arrive at a holistic understanding of the various issues involved, as well as collectively ideate plans to protect children post the COVID scenario. International Justice Mission has always been at the forefront to protect the most vulnerable from violence and oppression. And I assure you that IJM will continue to support the government and other stakeholders at any capacity, in every capacity, like we have done in the past. I would like to thank the Maharashtra government for all the initiatives it has taken to ensure justice for the most vulnerable. The situation is daunting, but as a fraternity, we come together and discuss the hard truths along with its complexities to ensure we are doing all in our power to deter the online sexual exploitation of children. We have come so far together in our fight to protect children, and we will continue to walk all the way together till it is achieved. My hope is that by the end of this webinar, we gave a diverse perspective on the nuances of the issue, setting us on a path to making informed decisions. I once again express my sincere gratitude to everyone for being here and wish all of us an engaging experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. It is indeed a subject that is the need of the hour, and we look forward to those diverse thoughts from different domains coming in to lead us to combat this crime. Next, I ask Ms. Seema Vyas, Member Secretary of Maharashtra State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, to share her thoughts and opening remarks. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Honorable Minister for Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of Maharashtra, Honorable Madam Yashomati Thakur ji, Honorable Chairman, MSCPCR Praveen Bhubeji, all the distinguished speakers and participants present today, greetings from the Child Rights Commission of Maharashtra. Now, internet has become such a part and parcel of our lives that today we cannot imagine our life without these information and communication technologies. We use them in so many very positive ways for our work, for entertainment, for play, for transactions, for social connections. But when we first started using internet, we never really anticipated that one day we will be also dealing with very nightmarish situations like cyber stalking, cyber bullying, trolling, online abuse, live streaming, sharing of inappropriate files, etc. Also, we never thought how challenging it's all going to be to keep up with these constantly evolving technologies. There's something called the deep web we learned, then we learned about the dark web, there's secrecy, there's anonymity to be dealt with, there's end-to-end encryption, there are numerous platforms and the apps, and it's a constantly changing landscape. Our children at any time are a vulnerable section of our society, and in these lockdown days, children are online for long hours. So there are added concerns about these matters, and each one of us has moral as well as legal responsibilities. Now, all this, as we can see around us, this problem is not going to go away very soon. So how do we tackle it? So public awareness, we feel this can be an important tool to deal with these issues. Child Rights Commission therefore has taken this initiative to organize this webinar in collaboration with IJM. I look forward to the discussions today. We need total commitment, cooperation, collaboration across the board, across countries, because no country is free from these dangers, across organizations, across experts. we need to learn from each other, and we need to learn the best practices in this particular field of combating these problems. So this is a very small step we have taken in the belief that when we come together as a team, we will be certainly able to face this problem in a better way. I once again welcome all the participants today, and I look forward to the discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we are absolutely privileged and honored to invite the Honorable Minister, Advocate Yashomati Thakur of the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of Maharashtra. Madam has been responsible for ensuring development, care and protection of children through cross-cutting policies and programs, spreading awareness about their rights and facilitating access to legislative, nutrition, institutional and legislative support, and for enabling children to grow and develop to their full potential. Ma'am, over to you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. And I really thank my officer, Seema Vyasji, for having come ahead and during the lockdown, having initiated to have this webinar. Our respected speakers, members of the Commission for Protection of Child Rights, members of the State Commission for Women, the member of Human Rights Commission, members of the judiciary, law enforcement agencies are also here, academicians are also here, and policymakers and members of the civil society organizations and all the participants. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to the national webinar that we are having today on the implementation of strategic policies to protect children from online sexual abuse. Now, this is a very intense topic, and generally people will not think about it, that a crime can be committed on this. There can be an online sexual abuse of the children also. But as Seema ji said, and as all of you spoke, I think we are into using a lot of internet these days, and everybody is on net, and everybody has a Android phone, and everybody, it's very easily accessible. And as easily accessible the internet is for its good, so is it for the bad things also. And cyber crimes and online abuses of children has really become an intense crime. It's a virtual, in this virtual world, we need to think about how we can get things into reality for the betterment of the society. Everybody is talking about protecting children, but actually I find it's very difficult to catch hold of these criminals, and it's very difficult to form policies also. If people like you all come up, it will help us to make laws, and it will help us in implementation also. Otherwise, if I have to do it alone, it's a very difficult job. We are all going to need each other's help, and it's a very, very intense. This is a very, very intense subject and a very, very intense crime that has to be dealt up properly, which policies have to be formed, and how to deal with. We're still learning how to deal with it. We've still not started dealing with it. Today, we are here to undertake efforts to safeguard the rights of the children. I mean, we talk about rights. Everybody has an equal right to everything, but when kids catch hold of the internet so easily, and it becomes very difficult for us to find out how they get caught into these crimes. But it is a very, 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 very intense problem that is coming up. The sources of the children's abuse is in whatever form it takes, needs to be addressed properly and absolutely in a real world. As the things are happening in this virtual factor, it becomes very difficult to actually form actually form and remain. We cannot afford to remain passive during this time. We have to have our mind clear about it, and we all must together to formulate policies. Unless we do that, it is not going to really help us, and it's not going to really help us save these children who get into these kinds of traps. It is very, last time I remember, from my very own district, there were porn films that were with the kids, which got the kids got caught, and it was very difficult for us to get the children out of that. And then, tracing out who the culprit is had become very difficult. But the police could manage it after a lot of struggle. Now, the struggle to find the culprit has to become easier. This is what I feel. The fundamental point is to make today is the rule of the law must apply to the online world also. Online world is a different world from what the real world is. And this online world, we need to have things in control and formulate proper laws. It, as a Minister of Women and Child Department, it has always been my concern that how do I save these children from the online abuse. And this is an absolute wonderful opportunity for my department, and all of you all are here together. We need to have a zero tolerance for these crimes which are coming up on the cybers and on the online surface. I encourage all of you all, whenever you all need any kind of help from my department, I am always there. Women and Child Department in Maharashtra really is very serious about having to form laws about the online abuse and the cyber crimes, which is taking up the children's rights. I hope all of you all can help me in doing it. And thank you so much for joining us in this webinar. I'm so grateful to each one of you all. Thank you.
Madam, we are so extremely grateful and grateful for your openness and your invitation to the government to combat this crime. I like what you said. It is an intense problem. Also, the question that you asked, how do we save these children from these perpetrators? I hope that today we will be able to get some concrete answers from the experts. All right, now we are going to switch gears, and we are going to ask our experts to come and share. We are so glad that we have a lineup of some of the most leading experts globally in this webinar, sharing inputs and knowledge from what they're currently doing in their domains. And even with the spread of domains, we have leaders from law enforcement, from corporate, from mental health, to be sharing with us today. With that said, I would like to invite our first panelist and speaker, Mr. Guillermo Galarza. He's the Director of Law Enforcement Training and Technology with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, ICMEC, in the USA. Mr. Guillermo is responsible for law enforcement training programs, child safety technology platforms offered to law enforcement around the world. ICMEC as an organization promotes the safety and well-being of children through policy development and multinational coordination. He's popularly known as GG, and GG has coordinated over more than 200 trainings around the world and has trained more than 25,000 law enforcement officials, including investigators, prosecutors, and other specialists from 127 countries around the world. He is also a heavily decorated officer. In recent years, he's worked with the Kerala police in establishing and building up the Kerala Cyber Dome. Gigi, we are just absolutely honored to have you here, hear from you and learn from your knowledge and your work, which you have invested all these years into combating this crime. Gigi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matt, and thank you, Jem, for the kind invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Honorable Minister Advocate Yashomati Thakur, Government of State of Maharashtra. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinguished opportunity, and it is a great initiative that you're putting this webinar together. We have to really talk about an issue that is not just affecting the state or the country, but it's a global issue. And we have to work together to continue to protect children, especially right now that children are spending more time at home. Child sex offenders are also spending more time at home. And that's created a huge gap in the area of child protection because children are most likely being on every type of device, whether it's a tablet, whether it's on a computer, whether it's video games. And child sex offenders know this. And it is very important that we know what we're doing. We know that we can teach our children, and we also teach our parents on the risk of the internet. So I want to really talk briefly about the issue. Let's always keep in mind that these are violent crimes involving real children. These children are re-victimized every time their image or abuse is distributed or shared. And there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of images circulating the internet, file sharing applications, and so on. And again, these are not just pictures like they're baseball cards. These are real victims involving real children, involving real crimes. Now, what are the risks of the children that we're seeing? They have exposure to inappropriate material such as content, hate, crime, exposure to adult or child pornography, grooming, harassment, and cyberbullying. What is the challenge for us as society, some of you as law enforcement, as government? Well, the challenge is, how do we protect children from online child sexual exploitation? How do we prevent child victimization? But how do we prevent the use of technology used by child sexual predators with intention of abusing children? And to tell you the truth, there's simply one answer, and that is education, prevention, and awareness. We cannot get to the root of the problem without educating children, without educating teachers, and most important, without educating parents. These days, both parents are working and they're leaving children at home, or they're living with a caretaker who we don't know what they're doing to the children. When we talk about the child sex offenders, who are they? We always think it's the strange person in the park, but a lot of times it's the person closest to the child. It could be a nanny, it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be an uncle, someone in the close vicinity to the child with an authority power. So it's very important that we know that they're not all the time, they're strangers. Again, who are the offenders? It could be a neighbor, a family, a parent or a guardian, a relative, babysitter. But look at the majority of the part, 25% is a neighbor or a family friend, someone in close connection or in contact with the child. Now, why do they offend? A lot of times we think it's the vampire effect, as we call it. That means that they were abused as they were kids, or they were beaten, and once they're beaten, they're gonna bite again. But that's not necessarily the case. A lot of times they're just experimenting between themselves. They arouse, they gratify themselves. They validate and justification for pedophile behavior. They know that international law enforcement is simply not equipped with the technology to investigate this type of crimes. Between themselves, they establish good trust, put of good intention. You give me one image, I'll give you two images. The sad reality is that they do collect these images like they're baseball cards. They know that it's low risk of detection. With new technologies, new tools, child sex offenders are anonymous. They hide themselves and they exchange videos, images, the worst of the worst images of child sexual abuse. Many countries, many states simply don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the laws. They don't have the legislation. And that's the number one challenge that we're seeing all over the world. Simply enough countries don't even define what is child sexual exploitation. Now in India, you have the best laws. Now we have to talk about implementation. Implementation is the key component. Now, just to show you a quick map, here we have India, right? There's the state of Maharashtra. Each dot that you will see, and this originally was going to be a video, but because of bandwidth, I'm not showing the video. I just did a screen capture. Each dot is an individual IP address of someone sharing known images of child sexual abuse material. I'm not just talking about images. I'm talking about videos. I'm talking about PowerPoints on how to abuse children and images. Now, if you would click on each dot expands. And that specific dot is sharing the same content with all those different other new dots. If I click again, it's the same component. And this one, again, this is a global problem, ladies and gentlemen. And the way that we can tackle this is by providing training and providing capacity. For the past 2 years, we have been working closely with our friends in Kerala, with the Kerala police, under the leadership of Manoj Ibrahim, who's going to be the next speaker. And they have been able to work very closely to identify child sex offenders. Now, what is really shocking, when you see here, you see a bunch of numbers and a bunch of IPs, etc. If you go all the way to the right, you're going to see a category, FOI. It's right in black, in bold, FOI. That means files of interest. And if you look at the first column with the first IP address, that individual IP address has 85,897 images of child sexual abuse. That to me, that's very concerning. And this is why we have to equip ourselves with the tools and technology to identify these child sex offenders. Our sister, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, has recently signed an MOU with the NCRB. And the purpose of this MOU is for NCMEC to send reports of child sexual abuse material to the NCRB, so the NCRB can distribute them to the different states. What kind of reports are sent? Child pornography, online child enticement of child sexual abuse, trafficking, molestation, sex tourism, and so on. NCMEC works very closely with the industry partners like Facebook, Twitter, Google, and others. In turn, what the NCMEC they do is they add value. They try to identify where the child might be, what country might be, and then hopefully the idea is to send them to the local authorities so they can investigate those specific cases. 2020, you will see a map here. Orange is the cases that have been 50,000 or more, and so on. Look at where is India. Look at other countries. You're not alone. This is a typical week, the week of May 3rd to May 10th. Look at the numbers of child pornography weekly, 543,000. This is just in a matter of a week of child pornography. Sex tourism, sex trafficking, and so on. In India, these are the reports that have been sent. Actionable reports, 522,000 reports. What are those reports? What's happening to those victims? What I'm most concerned is that we need to find where these child sex offenders are, because what they're going to do is they're going to be abusing children and distributing the images online like if they're baseball cards. And again, this is all over the world. This is not just in India. I mean, I could put the United States as well. One of the things that we really value how we work is that we value our partnerships. I'll never say we as an international organization can do it alone. We have to work together with the industry. We have to work together with law enforcement. It's a public-private partnership, and that's the key to combat online child sexual exploitation. A very important review, and I highly encourage everyone to look at this, icmec.org. Without the proper laws and legislations, countries, states can't do the work. Back in 2006, we released our first model legislation report, where we looked at the 5 different areas of key legislation, whether child pornography is criminalized, whether it's defined, whether distribution is criminalized, whether there's different simple definition. Back in 2006, only 5 countries out of 195 countries met the criteria. Moving now to 2020, there are many countries that have at least met 4 or 5 or even 3 of the requirements. But there's a lot of work to be done. And that involves public-private partnerships, working together with the policymakers and the legislators. And this is why I commend having this webinar, because we're bringing everyone together to address these issues. With that said, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your days to come to this webinar. As I said, a good example of a good working, and I'm going to say this again, I'm going to push it to Kerala Police, because Kerala has done a tremendous job. When we did a training back in 2008, I said with Mr. Manoj and the directors, and they said, what should we do next? This is a great training, but what should we do next? And we said, sir, you need to develop a specific unit to combat online child sexual exploitation. Not part of the cybercrime, not part of any other issues, but specifically to combat online child sexual exploitation. As a result, 2 months later, the unit was created. We continue to work with Kerala. We continue to implement better practices. We continue to develop tools and technology. And this is a very good example of how we can work together to develop capacity building. So with that said, thank you so much. You have my email, my contacts. If I can help you or institution can help you with anything, please do not hesitate and please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Guillermo. Just educative, but also I think it brought us to closer to the reality of the crime that we are dealing with. The number 5,22,270 workable cases just in the last few weeks or last month is absolutely staggering. It definitely raises every red flag that is there around us to see what we can do. TG also talked about, in a line he said, the method of tackling this crime is capacity building and training. And he ended, I think that is a key solution to combating this crime head on. With that being said, I'm absolutely once again to introduce our next panelist and speaker, Mr. Manoj Abraham, IPS, Additional Director General of Police from Kerala. He is also the Nodal Officer for Kerala Police Cyber Dome. He is also the architect of the Cyber Dome Center, private public participation in cyber policing, which has become a model center for cyber security in the PPP domain. Under Mr. Manoj's leadership, the center has become one of the most potent agencies in the area of cyber security and prevention of cyber crimes internationally. Also, the head of the Countering Child Sexual Exploitation, CCSE wing in Kerala Police, which in association with ICMEC has become an effective wing in checking online child pornography in this part of the globe. So over to you. Before Sir starts, I have a request to all our participants. Kindly pose your questions in the Q&A box that you can see. Take questions which we can answer towards the end. So over to you.
Thank you, Joji, and very good evening to the Honorable Minister, Advocate Yashomati Thakur, and all the distinguished guests and panelists who are attending this webinar today. It's a privilege that this occasion has come where we can present the problems and hopefully you can learn from what our lessons have been in this area. Gigi has already set the tone for the meeting, and so my task is easy, and I'll be giving a police perspective of how this problem has been handled in Kerala. There is no geographical limitation to any problem concerned with online child resemblance. What applies to Kerala applies to anywhere in the globe or any other state in the country. So whatever there is nothing reasonable about it because it's a crime without borders. So basically, looking at the issue of children, we Kerala Police, just a small slide to show you that we are actually a state which is totally child friendly, in the sense that we believe in the principle that if you get involved with children today, if your children are safe, we reduce crimes tomorrow. So that's why we have a lot of programs running in the schools, directly in the schools, done by the police department itself, including the world famous student police cadet program, the student protection groups, Project Hope, child-friendly police stations, Project Our Responsibility Towards Children, etc., which actually involves policemen directly getting involved with students in the schools to reduce crime for the future. So in that part, in that context, we went into this online crimes against children because we found that that has terribly increased. And that's how we came out with the policing system. So just before going into that, I'll just give you a few trends of what we are saying. Gigi has already given the basics of what is happening in the world. And what is happening with the country, I'll just give you a few snippets and then go on to what police can be done and the strategies that we can adopt to actually quell this problem. As was discussed earlier also, most of the problem is in the darknet sites, the pornographic sites are in the darknet. We have a lot of social media being used for spreading and transmitting all kinds of videos and photographs, including Telegram, WhatsApp, because of their encryption. And of course, the anonymous chat groups and the cloud storage, where all these videos are placed and anybody with a link can go and get it downloaded after giving payment in bitcoins, etc. Now, when we come down to the lockdown trends, Gigi has already mentioned a few trends as such, but India-specific trends, I'll just discuss. If you look at the February-March figures with the April-May figures, you will find that there has been a quantum jump in all kinds of downloads. Gigi was mentioning about the fact of interest. If you look at it, it has almost gone more than double what we had in February-May compared to April-May when the lockdown period came. This is of course understandable because of the lockdown. Most of the criminals and the children, both of them were locked inside the houses, giving ample opportunity for the criminals to actually download, upload, and transmit a lot of videos. If you look at the file severity and the downloading rate also, you'll find the same feature that the statistics show a very increasing trend with regards to the transmission of CSAM material as such. So these are basically the trends. We have a lot of local pictures or images of children being digitally transformed because generally our understanding is that most of the pictures are of the Western world, are of the Southeastern countries, but we found that recently in the pandemic, it was the local pictures because we could understand from the calendar behind or from the magazine on the table that it's from Kerala, from India, that most of the pictures and images come from this country itself. A lot of such materials are being distributed without the victim's knowledge. We had pictures of children inside the house because lockdown, you know, the person or the criminal can't move out of the house. And so most of the pictures were taken inside the house, which is even more disturbing because you have only the parents and the immediate relatives only inside the house, which makes the problem more compounded. Then most of the victims do not disclose the victimization. We have few formal complaints coming to the police station. We need to take proactive action to actually get into the system because they're very reluctant to come and give a complaint. And then a few trends which we found on social media, Telegram, etc. The police were monitoring very closely. So what they did, the Telegram groups, etc. They shut down, not shut down. They actually made the Telegram groups into a channel where the admin only can post the contents. This made it very difficult for the law enforcement actually to come through and get through to the administrator, get through to the members and detect them. Then a lot of WhatsApp groups, we know WhatsApp groups are generally created with numbers, our numbers, but there are a lot of fake numbers available with various applications where you can actually take those third-party applications and create WhatsApp numbers and use that in groups for transmitting CSAM material. So that was another trend that we found during the lockdown period. These are basically trends on the social media. You look at anything, Telegram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, darknet, cloud storage. Everywhere there was tremendous increase in the transmission of CSAM material during the lockdown period compared to the previous 2 months as such. So massive increase in the browsing of child sexual abuse material, the downloading rate from BitTorrents, that is where the videos are downloaded. There also you found that there is a tremendous increase. Most of the search, if you look at the search pattern, it was for girls, children between 10 to 15 years. And of course, downloading similar files became more during this period. So basically looking at, that was just a start on what the trends are currently in the country. This is basically, it's not country based, it's not state based, it's not a Kerala specific problem, because this is an international problem. Any pedophile sitting in US can be accessing our video or pictures as such. So it's a global problem, a problem without borders. That's why the strategy is also, it's similar for everybody. So we'll just give what Kerala police has been doing in this field. We have to do a lot more, and every state can actually follow us and include these strategies. We have a center called the Kerala Police Cyberdome, which Gigi and Joji were mentioning. It's basically public-private participation to ensure that we prevent cybercrime. Generally, the role of the police always is after the complaint is filed, we try to go in for detection of crime as such. But what we do at Cyberdome, we try to actually prevent crime with public-private participation. And that's what we have done here. We have actually tied up with a lot of agencies around the globe, international agencies, international law enforcement groups, government sector, private sector, academia, universities, students. And we build this Cyberdome where we work together on one platform, because all these industries and other partners give us the necessary know-how, the necessary information, the platform to actually work together. And we have found that over the last 4-5 years, this model has been very successful. We have been able to detect a lot of crimes, prevent a lot of crimes from happening, including financial fraud and online crimes against children. So these are some of the collaborations that we have: Interpol, students, government, international LEAs, private organizations, you name it, we have it. And they're all partnering together on one platform for the cause of preventing cyber crimes, particularly online crimes against children. So this is what Gigi talked about. We have a understanding that this problem is very acute, that online child sexual exploitation is on the rise. We actually put up a dedicated counter child sexual exploitation center with the assistance of the ICMEC, who came and trained us for days together. We have 100-strong group spread throughout the state, technical hands, 120 odd people, working 24/7, looking into CSAM, looking into online exploitation of children, and trying to detect and trying to prevent such crimes from happening. So this basically is set up. It's a cell which functions throughout the state. Every district has a small cell functioning with technical know-how, with the necessary training to handle the problem. So this is basically a timeline. We started in 2017. We did a lot of operations. We had a lot of training, and finally 2020, we have a lot of operations coming in. These were the various raids that we conducted, titled P-Hunt, where we have netted around, if you look at the figures there, you'll understand we had conducted 210 searches so far. We have registered 38 cases. We have arrested 42 individuals also so far, and the drives are continuing. So basically, what strategies we need to adopt? Basically, this center was one of the strategies. Then we have multiple reporting portals and means. We require portals and means which the youth or children are utilizing. And we have set up a multiple areas where anybody who is interested in complaining to the police can come in. We have portals like the one you see on the screen. We have social media presence in all the major handles, Facebook, you take Snapchat. We are one of the most, I think the most popular police sites on Facebook worldwide. Similar in TikTok, ShareChat, you have it every social media handle. We have a page there where people can actually come and report their crimes, and a lot of information actually on these crimes come through these means. And that is one major step that we take. Then we have a Kids Glow program running, which is a positive program. Now we are doing it online also. This program is basically awareness, not only for kids, it's for parents and teachers together. So what the parents should do when you are in a lockdown period, what steps, what security things they need to take to ensure that the kids are safe. We have programs running for teachers also on what they should do when online classes are being taken for students, because we have a lot of hacks and other things now. So this program is running throughout the state in all the schools, and it's a very successful program that we do. Then the other strategies we are looking at is we need to have special access to international databases, portals, etc. Because this, as I mentioned earlier, it's an international problem and it has no borders. So we need access to that. We have access to a lot of them. We require more. Then we require to acquire the state-of-art tools and techniques and technologies to identify, because identification of anybody on the darknet or on encrypted social media handles is so very difficult. And so it is very essential that you have the latest tools and techniques to actually go behind the criminals. Then adopt best practices. Many countries are adopting various best practices in this area. We need to adopt, rather than create new ideas, we need to adopt those best practices. And as Gigi was mentioning, capacity building is the most important thing. Having the know-how to be aware of the thing and to have the technology to identify such criminals and to go behind them. Another major aspect is the victim identification and rehab, because now what we are doing is basically we are detecting online criminals, but we forget about the victim. The victim may be continuing to be exploited at their respective homes or at those places. We need to identify them and to have a proper system for rehabilitation also. So these are some of the additional strategies that we can do. Another major thing that we have seen very effective is the publicity of what we are doing. You publicize the activities that the law enforcement is doing, the organization is doing, the Child Rights Commission is doing. That has a great deterrence, because during the lockdown period also we couldn't do much because it was locked down for the ISPs, for the various companies, for the police also were engaged. But we gave a lot of publicity that police is doing a lot of things, and that was a great deterrence to actually prevent this crime to a great extent. So publicity is another very important aspect in this war. So that is it. These are some of the strategies that we adopted, and this is universal. There is nothing local about it. And every other state, every other organization, every other law enforcement agency can come and follow the same principle. And what I want to say is it's only a coordinated effort that can really help in ensuring that we can work together to ensure that these crimes against children are reduced and we make an online world safer for children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manoj. I think you hit the nail in the head when you mentioned about the strategies, a multi-diverse, coordinated, multi-partnered strategic effort that can address this crime, bringing the crime up front by making the actions of the police public. I think these are good learnings. I also think the data that you brought out, sir, about innocent local pictures, I think that brings home the issue home into our hearts about how close this issue is around us, but how invisible it is. Also, its borderless nature, how our importance, how we need to keep a close watch on this. Thank you, sir, for your strategies and what you've thought. I think will go along in several states adopting some of these measures that you have already taken. Thank you, sir. We request again all the participants to continue posting your questions. I'd like to now invite Mr. Satya Yadav, the head for Safety Facebook India. Satya is the head of Trust and Safety for Facebook India and directly works on issues of internet safety and security. He drives strategic safety efforts against terrorism, human trafficking, crime against children, narcotics, and other online safety issues for both Facebook and Instagram. He works with the government, security agencies, and regulators managing enforcement responses in this region. Prior to joining Facebook, Satya was leading the cybersecurity practice at a Big Four consultancies. Satya is also an officer and an alumnus of IIM Lucknow. Satya, happy to have you amongst us this evening.
Thank you, Matthew. Quickly confirming if you can see my screen. Great.
Yes, we can.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, and mostly thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Really honored to be part of the August gathering with a lot of old partners that I get to work anyway with. Gigi, I can see Gigi, and of course Manoj is here, and other panelists. But thank you also to the Honorable Minister, Ms. Thakur, for being here and adding importance to the discussions. We of course work a lot on, as you covered, a lot of safety issues, but I want to speak, I think 12 minutes of my time I want to utilize talking a bit about child safety, and we already have it covered by the other panelists on the gravity of the problem that is there in India. And we all are here together, along with, I think, 315, and that's quite remarkable to see 315 people come on a webinar to discuss this issue, which is a good sign of the development that we're seeing in India on this grievous issue of child safety. So let me spend some time talking about what Facebook does handling this, because clearly as a large platform, we have a lot of responsibility to handle this issue along with other safety issues. If I can begin by talking a bit about our mission. Facebook's mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And each one of us believes at Facebook, each one of us believes strongly in the mission, in the sense that we believe that a more connected world is a more equal world, is a more empowered world. How far have we gone into our mission? I think we have, at Facebook, we commonly say that we're just 1% finished, and the 99% of the journey is ahead of us. So with that, I think with the recent lockdown, we've crossed over 3 billion monthly active people who come on Facebook, family of apps. In India alone, I think it's around 328 million people who come on Facebook every month in India alone. And that would be Facebook and Instagram. I think another 400 million on WhatsApp, which come. So that's a substantial number. I think if the informal numbers that I have with me on the number of internet users in India, I think it's somewhere around 700 something million. So that is clearly almost 50% of all internet users in India have one or the other account, either on Facebook or on Instagram, and I think also on WhatsApp. What does that mean for us? Essentially, that would mean a lot of good things, right? For all of us, I think out of the 320 odd people who are on this webinar, most of us would be using Facebook for a variety of issues, for a variety of things, for entertainment, for social issues, for engagement, for meaningful interactions, for staying in touch with family. But as Manoj and Gigi both brought out, that there are also other people who use such opportunities that these platforms provide for nefarious activities. What we really see is that we see a large number of issues on safety around CSAM, around circulation CEI, around bullying, harassment, and of course terrorism and narcotics and so many other issues that basically covered in my introduction. How do we deal with them? To begin with, the disclaimer is that, of course, we acknowledge that we are not the experts and that we have not done enough while we have done enough, which means that we need to keep doing more, while we also need to share with you what we have been doing so far in tackling all the safety issues, particularly child safety. We broadly categorize our response to child safety in a couple of buckets. So we have policies and enforcement, then we have tools, and I'm going to cover them very quickly in the coming slides. We have partnerships and education, and then we have resources, and of course, then we have a feedback loop, which comes from government, regulators, users, forums like this, and in other interactions. Why do we need policies on our platform? Of course, we need a program which defines what is acceptable, what is not acceptable by users to post on Facebook and Instagram. Our policies cover a range of subjects, but particularly for safety, we define what is misrepresentation and impersonation and what is allowed, what is not allowed. Similarly, for graphic violence, what is the extent of what is the imagery, what is the content, what is the text that is allowed, what can users post for adult nudity and sexual activity, similarly for child nudity and sexual exploitation, and so on and so forth. So these policies are live documents which we keep developing based the changing scenario. For example, when COVID happened, we had new policies which reflected on the new challenges of COVID. And similarly, I think 6 months back or almost a year back, India was the only country which had a caste-based policy where we were protecting people basis their castes, which essentially means that nobody can really use a person's caste to inflict insults or any other sort of abuse. All our policies are, you can find them, they're lengthy documents, but they're interesting documents. And I really urge this audience to go to this URL which is mentioned here, or just simply search for community standards, Facebook, and go through the documents just to understand the nuance of how these policies are developed. These policies, how we really develop a policies also not that a couple of people sit in the room and decide on their own. These policies are developed based essentially with a lot of experts. For example, the safety policies would be developed in support in guidance of a safety board, along with I think more than 400 NGOs and partners who advise us on what should be included in the policies, which would include a lot of partners from India, a lot of NGOs and academicians and researchers from India who would contribute to these policies, to the advice. But clearly, just having policies alone is not enough. So these policies should also be enforced. And in terms of child safety, when we talk about child safety and related issues, we have essentially 3 ways that we look at it. One is we rely a lot on the users to report to us of violating content which has CSAM or CEI in it. And of course, we action it. We have around 35,000 people and counting, who look at this content and action it, basically content moderators. Along with this team, we also have experts who advise us on trends, developing, like how Manoj covered about the spike during COVID. So we are on top of all these things with the industry partners, with the things that we see in the user reports on our own, with the kind of content that is being reported, and then we take appropriate action. To support all of this, we rely heavily on our detection technology, which is essentially paths, to quite some extent, it's also industry leading on a couple of fronts. There are a lot of technologies, AI and ML, that we use to ensure that CI doesn't stay on a platform. I'll probably talk about a few if I can. One of the most prominent ones that we depend on, rely upon is photo DNA, which essentially means that all the CI imagery, and experts would know that a lot of CI imagery gets recirculated. So the thought was that if we can start hashing all the CI imagery in the world to begin with, and then keep building upon that database of CI imagery, that would be a good sort of database to as a reference point to action content on platforms across, like not only Facebook, Instagram, but also on other platforms which are part of that consortium. So the photo DNA technology essentially would hash these files, and then Facebook would not let users either not let them upload these files because of the photo DNA match, or it would take them down pretty quickly when it is detected by our AI and machine learning. So that's one of the technologies. Of course, the artificial intelligence, we were the first ones to use artificial intelligence in discovering content which is CEI and actioning it. And of course, we keep on building upon improving upon our tools. We also have a URL sharing program where we go great lengths to prevent the sharing and creation of CSAM. So we work with the Internet Watch Foundation, which essentially keeps a list of or database of all the URLs which are related to child CEI. And then we make sure that our platforms, Facebook and Instagram, are not used to host those URLs or to share those URLs or circulate those URLs. We also have controls on what people can search on or search bars within the Facebook and Instagram apps, which essentially means that if a user would search for a predetermined keyword which we think is related to child safety or child exploitative imagery, then we would sort of prompt that user that this is, so of course the search will not go through, and we'll prompt the user that and advise the user that this is something that you can't search for, and this is why in violation of our policies and violation of maybe the local laws. Of course, a lot of technology that we have, we also realize that it will be good to share that with other players, especially players, industry players, other platforms who do not have the same depth of resources that Facebook and Instagram have. So we have open sourced a lot of our detection technology for small businesses and for other smaller platforms to use so that they can action on CEI content from the technology that we have developed and provided. And as I said, that this is work in progress. So essentially that means that we continue to research with the partners. Our efforts to develop and deploy technological innovations to address CSAM. We partner with University of Maryland, Conlin University, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, University of California, and the like. Of course, we in Indian context as well, although most of our policies are global, but especially child safety policies, as Manoj had covered, that the modus operandi is standard, it's global, everybody, it's not an India-based problem, it is a global problem, it's an internet problem. So with that in mind, all these policies that we develop, all this research that we do is platform-wide, but we do make it a point that we engage local partners in India, including the government, the regulators, the NGOs, the researchers and academicians, and we work with them closely to see how we can better improve our processes and policies. So what does all this lead to? Essentially, this would lead to some numbers, right? Enforcement numbers. And there's enforcement numbers that look like that for the last 6 months, which, so interestingly, just a day before this webinar, we released a transparency report on 12th May, which talks about our enforcement numbers. So 2.8 billion fake accounts were disabled by us in the last 6 months, ending March, 31st March. 92.8 million pieces of adult nudity and sexual activity were disabled. Violent content, terrorist propaganda, hate speech. Most interesting is the child nudity for this audience, as you can see on the slide. And what's interesting is that this is also a reflection of the investment in the work that we do on our artificial intelligence, machine learning, and proactive content search or proactive content enforcement. And that is reflective from the numbers that almost all of these various safety issues, including child safety, more than 99% or close to 99, 98%, sometimes even close to 100% of the times, the content has been flagged and taken down before any user is even reported to us. So that means that our systems are smart enough over the years and continue to get smarter and take down content before people get to see it or people report it. Gigi covered the NICMIC initiative. I quickly want to talk about this for briefly 30 seconds. Of course, we work very closely with Facebook, just like industry works very closely with ICMIC and NICMIC. We were instrumental in sort of working with the Indian government and with NICMIC, acting as a bridge, and had the unique privilege of being an industry partner to work on this child safety sort of MOU, where we bridged NICMIC and the Indian government to sign an MOU last year in April, which Gigi also spoke about, wherein now the NICMIC VPN, which is basically essentially an encrypted tunnel of sharing all these reports with NCRB, which is the National Crime Records Bureau, which gets all these dumps. So the 5 lakh reports, which were spoken about by I think by Gigi, were shared with NCRB, and NCRB is doing a phenomenal job of sharing it across all of India with law enforcement. And I know Kerala is leading among all law enforcement in terms of enforcement of the action, but we have equally committed partners and we get to work with them closely. In Maharashtra, the Maharashtra Cyber does a phenomenal job of working on these reports. We have, I think, seen more than 200, and that's an informal number, but of course the numbers would have increased. But last count, I think what I heard from NCRB was that we had seen more than 200 FIRs all over India in the last 6 months. Karnataka does a fabulous job, West Bengal again, and so many other states which have taken up this challenge and working on it ever since the Nick McVeepin has come in, and they're getting these reports.
Hey, Satya.
I know in the interest of time, I'll quickly wind up. I know it's a long presentation. There's a lot of work that we do on the Facebook side when it comes to child safety and of course other safety issues, including working with the government. We have user tools where users can come and
Satya, hi.
Hi.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. Since we're running out of time, is it okay if I ask the next speaker to speak? Sorry, but since we're running out of time.
No problem. I think I lost track of time into the webinar setup, but thank you. I can close it here, and I can take the question answer later.
Yeah, thank you very much, Satya. Thank you especially for highlighting Facebook's proactive efforts in looking at this issue and looking at other crimes too. Thank you, Satya. Next we have Dr. Harish Shetty. Child psychiatrist from Mumbai. Dr. Harish is a practicing psychiatrist and has worked in the field of yoga and mental health. He has immense experience in the space of mental health, suicide prevention, and is actively working among students, teachers in Maharashtra. I welcome Mr. Shetty to share his thoughts and his understandings on combating this crime from a victim-centric perspective. Thank you. Excuse me, sir, you are muted. Sir, it looks like your mic is off or the volume is low. It is muted now.
Okay, now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Please go ahead. Thank you.
So let me come to the point straight. We see a lot of teachers abusing students during the lockdown period, and you'll ask me how. This has been going on for a very long time in my state of Maharashtra and other states where I visit schools continuously. I'm in a school once a week. And this is one of the most difficult crimes which are never reported. So there was this boy who said, I got explicitly sexual content from my favorite teacher. And when I asked him, what do you mean by favorite? And he said that he is an excellent teacher. I feel very upset when he has said this, but he's a very good teacher. Because of him, I've scored 100 out of 100 in my maths papers. This is just one example. So one intervention which we have started in schools straight away with the permission of the school principal and other authorities is a mention to the kids very straight. If a teacher sends you explicit content or has been involved in any form of abuse, subtle, nuanced, or direct, report to the school immediately. It could be a teacher inside the school, it could be a teacher outside the school. That's one important aspect we need to understand. And I would like to say that we should not be unclear of identifying or sharing the targets. That would not mean that the children will use them against all the teachers if they have to get back at them. No. Number two, I see a lot of abuse by older children. And I mean older children, I mean between the ages of 18 to 23 on children who are as old as 8 to 15. And that is also because of the intermingling of children who have a lot of time with students who have been out of college, out of jobs, and are on the net all the time. I would not say everybody is a pedophile. Now, when you look at this again, these events happen in the locality. I still remember this girl who came to me after her exams. She stood first in her exams in the school and she got beyond 95%. And she was abused by a boy who has just crossed 18, was 19, this girl was 15. And the reporting part of such events has been very, very less, very, very scarce. So these are the two targeted interventions we need to make when we talk about child sexual abuse either online or offline. Now, when we are doing all this, very few teachers, very few parents are educated in becoming nuanced signs of child sexual abuse offline or online. In the lockdown period, we heard in my webinars and in my direct contact with a lot of families across the last 2 decades, I got a lot of calls from parents that children are viewing explicitly inappropriate content, and when I asked them what is inappropriate content, and they would say they are in groups, WhatsApp groups, where students from the older classes are sending inappropriate content. So there's enough evidence, experiential evidence, to suggest that professional pedophiles might have been identified earlier. They may have been charge sheeted, convicted, etc., etc. But these two groups always escape the eyes of the law because the reportage of these groups are very less. They are older children beyond 18, less than 21, 22, and teachers. As we see all this, I was very shocked to hear that one alleged pedophile jumped down from the court at Dindoshi on the first day of his hearing. He just jumped down and he died. And when we did a psychological autopsy of the entire event, we found that the event was that this child was in the bathroom. 7-year-old child was in the bathroom. He was a housekeeping gentleman. He went to the bathroom to pick the child. He came back a little longer than the time which was allotted to him. And the child complained to the mother something. The father came and assaulted this housekeeping staff inside the school very badly. The case was registered, and the police investigated. I do not know what happened, and I really have not seen the charge sheet. But this gentleman jumped. So in our entire endeavor to see that pedophiles are identified, children are kept safe, they are educated, we should also have a look that when somebody is accused, a very detailed investigation, a detailed 164 should be made, and pressure from parents and families should not be viewed as the only iota of evidence against the child. As I say all this, I train teachers, I train judicial officers, I train JJB members at the National Judicial Academy as well as the Maharashtra State Judicial Academy. Education is what Gigi said, and capacity building is what Manoj Abraham also said. In India, education and capacity building still has a long way to go. There are so many myths and so many incorrect understanding of child sexual abuse that we need to have a major blitzkrieg, which would mean we need to have a movement related to child sexual abuse across the country, across all sections. After having said this, one campaign which we are indulged in, me and my colleagues in the mental health field, is to have child safety policies in every school. It's extremely difficult to convince schools to have child safety policy, and if they have a child safety policy, it remains only on paper. In a school which I run, we have a child safety policy which is inclusive, and this child safety policy is also linked to the drug policy. It's also linked to the mental health policy. In the next 2 minutes, what I would like to share is it's not essential to identify children only who have been abused, but children when they become adults. A lot of adults come and inform us about online abuse which has happened years ago. In fact, I would say after the POCSO Act was gazetted. And the impact of abuse across time can be listed, as you all know. But I would share some of the rare impacts which are seen. Anybody who refuses to marry, and anybody who has obsessive compulsive disorder, a lot of such cases are because of child sexual abuse in childhood. There have been a lot of testimonials shared But what is very important to summarize is, let us look at teachers directly. When you say teachers to kids straight, then they're able to identify, then they have enough courage to report. When you say elder children, then they are able to identify immediately and they're not scared to report. When you do this, it's so important to educate the teachers that we're not against all teachers, we're only helping the children to report. I would say in any policy, whether it is a disaster policy during the COVID crisis or a policy after any event, we need to add mental health relief and compensation post online abuse or sexual abuse as a part of the rehabilitative measures to the victim. It's not only the conviction of the victim which is important, but a psychological rehabilitation policy which is very important for the child to come back. Lastly, I'm part of a movement which is Don't Offend India, and that movement is also to identify non-offender pedophiles and provide them treatment. And this entire group has started its activity in India. KM Hospital Pune is a hospital where we treat pedophiles who come and report to us. Again, this is not an excuse to avoid the act of the law. It's only for those who have not offended, because psychiatrists and mental health professionals have enough evidence that pedophilia is also an impulse control disorder where some adults are not able to hold themselves back when they get a desire. So stopping the desire and helping them to be normal and not offend children is also a movement which I am involved in. With this, I thank IGM to genuinely discuss this issue, and I'm shocked at the figures which Manoj Abraham shared, and I'm very happy to see that Facebook actually has really come up with a lot of protective mechanisms for children, and I'm really delighted to see the work of Gigi across Kerala and across so many countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harish. We really like the suggestion that you've brought about suggesting a mental health relief package within policies and to ensure that implemented. I think from our work over the last many years here in India and other countries, we have learned that that definitely is an important component to help survivors to be mainstream back into community, whichever crime we deal with. But I think especially for crimes related to children, that is important. Thank you, Doctor. Our final speaker this evening and expert panelist is Mr. Krishna Shastri Pendalia. Very honored to have him here. He is currently working as the Executive Director and Advisory for Cybersecurity Incident Response Services with PricewaterhouseCoopers India. Prior to this, Mr. Shastri also worked for 3.5 with TCS as head for fraud management and digital forensics. And for 23 years, almost a quarter of a decade, he was with the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India as a forensic scientist, and handled a large number of investigations of national and international importance. Sir, your presence here will help us understand how the different domains together can work on the policy together because of your experience from various domains. Thank you for being here. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Just let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At the outset, good evening to all, respected Honorable Minister Yashomati ji and other distinguished panel members. A very good evening and all the participants. So I would like to thank the organizers for taking this initiative, because this is almost a two and a half decades problem. Because this is, I think, probably I've written the article in the year 2005, but 1999, 2000, I've written a lot of articles in the media, especially the kids' online safety. But people have not took much interest at that time. Slowly, it started gaining importance. So I don't want to get more into the back, but my previous speakers have spoken a lot about, and they set the tone, especially GJ Matthews, Shimaya Vyas, Manoj, and all the people. So I don't want to discuss about the gravity of the problem, but based on my experience for the last 20 years, I can able to say that the various cases which I investigated, the various law enforcement agencies of more than 95 countries which I trained through Interpol. Let me share some of the things which really remember mind-boggling issues. Yes, there is no doubt online sexual abuse has become very high. Nobody can deny that fact. But the increasing trend has become very high. The reason is the bandwidth is increasing to a great extent. And the second is there was no regulation of the internet. That is one of the biggest problems. And once this COVID scenario has come, remember, every kid is having a mobile phone or a laptop. The parents are purchasing and giving, because almost every schools and colleges started teaching everything only via internet. But please remember, here it is, once every technology advancement is happening, the criminals also started using it. They know that what are the tools and technique the law enforcement agencies are really. They try to beat the law enforcement agencies by something called as anti-forensic techniques. Means we can't identify that who is a real criminal. Mr. Manoj has explained the difficulty in the encryptions. It is very shocking to know, based on my investigations for the last 20 years, some of the pedophiles are having their own proprietary encryptions which are not available in the public domain. Please remember, the proprietary encryptions are impossible to break it. The second thing they are using is a beautiful technique called as steganography. It's called art of hiding one file behind another file. A genuine Ramayana type of, remember, a video clip will go, but inside that video clip of Ramayana, there is a possibility of a pornographic clip is available. So steganography is really creating a big problem. Second is tracking and tracing of the IP addresses, which my colleagues have spoken about earlier. But today the difficult task is, attackers are using the proxies today, and they're using the virtual private networks. It is one-to-one connections and peer-to-peer connections. And it is compounded with the problem of dark web is another one. And at least earlier we have some scenarios where the money has been paid and who was the beneficiaries who are watching it. But today it has become a completely virtual currencies, the Bitcoins and Litecoins, they're using it. Tracking and tracing has become the next impossible task. So our approach is traditionally, and as on date, is also a completely reactive approach, and we failed miserably as far as the reactive approach is concerned. Why we failed the reactive approach? We are not in a position to identify who are the real stakeholders for this. So what can I have something called as a proactive approach? Can I have something called as a predictive approach? So once the reactive approach has failed, so law enforcement agencies are really started thinking about to move from reactive to proactive to predictive. So let us see the reactive approach where victims are coming and reporting. That's where Manoj has kept it, remember, an online platform which the Kerala government has started. And the government of India has also started several web portals. The state police have started their portals so that people who are victims, they should come and report it. And the identity will be maintained with secrecy and all that. Police did the investigations, and they also provided a very good, remember, the first responder trainings in collection of the evidence which is really admissible in the court. But the biggest problem we are facing is here. Point number one, in many cases, the evidence is not present within the state, it is present in the different states and different countries. So do you have something called a mutual legal assistance treaty, the MLA preparations? It is a very tough task. The time of response is, if you look at it, something around 8 months in some other cases. So blocking of the content on internet, again, police are taking measures. Remember, once something has reported, they are taking the court permissions to block a particular content, because the powers to block a particular website with the government of India agency called Computer Emergency Response Team. And they're also coordinating the various ISPs and the nodal officers. And some states are trying to create something like a special e-courts for the speedy trials. But unfortunately, India is not a signatory of the Budapest Convention, that's called Convention of the Cybercrime. So exchange of information via international has become another toughest task. So there are certain plus, there are certain, but reactive approaches really we faced it. But basically for anything, remember, win at home is a basic logic. So what is the proactive approach I would like to suggest is, first is, it is, remember, not just only the children should be educated, because before that there is a one more line of defense that is called the parents. I come across several times where parents says that my son knows more about computer than me, and they're simply purchasing. They don't know what the kid is really doing on that. So educating the parents is very, very important. Like Mr. Manoj has said about the Kerala government initiative, educating the parents as well as the teachers. Second is, what are the real problems that are involved? The parents should also communicate with the children. And nowadays, most of the parents are spending a lot of time with, remember, the children. This is the right time, remember, for them to do it. And third is a line of defense is something called the technology solutions, where at the endpoint machines, that is our mobile phones, or it may be, remember, the house computer systems, parents should be encouraged to install some filtering softwares. So Microsoft is having a by default certain, remember, features, certain configurations they can set it that should be implemented. And monitoring software should be installed. The reason is the child is below, remember, 18 years, privacy issues will not come into picture at all. To what time they're supposed to use a particular software, the time limiting softwares are available, and what ISPs they should access it and what should be browsed, etc. These things should be implemented on each and every device. Currently, many parents are not even aware about that. They are just purchasing something and giving to the kids. So what is the other thing is, many people are having a feeling, yes, it is only the law enforcement agency's problem to curtail online sexual abuse against the children. The answer is not correct. There are various stakeholders that are going to play very, very important. For example, the parents, we have seen it. Individuals and NGOs. I have seen some countries where if any individual who is a citizen of the country, if you come across any other website where a pornographic content is there, they're coming forward to report it. There are certain NGOs taking a voluntary activity and reporting the police, yes, this is a particular website where I'm able to find a particular pornographic content. And schools should be encouraged and should be mandatory, should be made. They should teach cyber ethics as a part of their curriculum. But unfortunately, no school is having this as a subject to teach. And it should be a mandatory subject for each and every school. The next is corporates are having a corporate social responsibility. I've seen it in the year 2001 to 2008. The NASCOM and Data Security Council of India has created a cyber safety weeks in Mumbai and Calcutta and some of the metropolitan cities. And out of the 1 week, remember, one day was clearly earmarked for the parents and the children about online safety measures, but it was completely missed. Microsoft, my colleague Satya has mentioned about the photo DNA project, which is an excellent initiative that was taken up. And ISPs is again, they should also have a very good role to play it. And self-regulation or no regulation is a very, very important question. There's a lot of debate has to be happen. After the Baji.com incident has happened, remember, the self-regulation has to be very, very important. And currently we don't have, remember, at the national level, something called as a cyber patrol force. The law enforcement agencies have to come up, tighten their belts instead of duplicating the things in many states. Let us have a centralized location called cyber patrol force, which is going to do a web mining and the web crawling to identify the pornographic content. Before something happens, how you can monitor, how you can crawl the website, what was the content, is it a pornographic content or not a pornographic content? What is the threshold to call it as a pornographic content? We have to develop the tools, and that cyber patrol force should be equipped with that. And for that, you require to have a strong public-private partnership, which my cyber domain Kerala is really doing a wonderful job. Yes, we as a software side, and remember corporate responsibility, we are ready to come forward to help the law enforcement agencies, because what is your requirement? Remember, the IT industry is not aware. IT industry and the police should come together and develop the tools which can do a perfect social networking analysis, identification of people, websites, web pages, chat groups where these activities are happening. What is the relation that is happening between the groups and groups? Because the groups will change very, very frequently. And using the artificial intelligence and machine learning to identify the pornographic content. Because photo DNA is having certain limitations, remember, that limitations today, remember, the cyber pedophiles are taking advantage of that one. How can you use AI and machine learning to identify a particular picture will come under the category of a pornographic content or not a pornographic content based on that country's policies? And Google is also providing a very good tools called something reverse imaging tools. Drop it that, remember, any particular missing children's photograph, you will see what are the places where the children was available, what websites that is really moving. Combine all that and do a social network analysis. That is also very, very important. And cyber deception is a one tool. Currently, we are not using it. We have to develop our own chatbots which are going to remember, yes, speak with the cyber pedophiles. So we are going to respond for them as a chat bot and get that information, identify the IP address who is really interested to download or upload the pornographic content, have a tracking. That is very, very important. That's where we are supposed to use a new concept called the open source intelligence. That is very, very important. And we did a very good, remember, cases for some of the state governments about a missing girl. The photograph is only available. So her photograph, we are able to identify in escorts websites. The same we are able to identify in some of the webcam success. We identified as a party who are interested to do that. And we contacted the organizers, loot them with money, identify the whole network using profile picture of the groups, identify the whole network, what linkages they are having, what connectivities they are having, what websites they are hosting it, what is the IP addresses from where. We are able to identify the entire network. So deception is one technique which really the Indian law enforcement agency should go as something called as, remember, a reactive, proactive as well as a predictive techniques. So thank you very much. If you are having any doubts, I'll be more than happy to answer it.
Thank you very much, sir. Really, for me, one of the key learnings from what you talked about was the future of technology, especially when we are looking at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and even chatbots to be possible solutions for the future. And these are definitely terrains that need to be further explored and further experimented. I think earlier Satya also had touched upon these two topics, artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I think that is something that if there are police officials from the cyber department teams, those, we can take note of to look at closely. Now, we are a bit over time already. We request everyone to stay back for maybe another 17 minutes. We want to close by 6:20 Indian Standard Time. And we have a few questions for most of the panelists here. And I want to start the questions that have actually come for Honorable Minister. Madam, if you are here. There's a question, Madam, for you. Question is, what are the steps the Maharashtra government is taking for interstate and inter-department cooperation to tackle this crime? Interstate and inter-department cooperation to tackle this crime.
See, we have the Juvenile Board, we have the Mahila Commission, and we have its members also. Now we have also shifted our office absolutely to the division levels, and we are trying to tackle these issues. It has, we have been successful as far as the domestic crime is concerned, but as far as the we are still in the process of developing a system as far as the online crimes and especially abusement of children is concerned. We do have our system in where we share our problems and take help of the interstate officers also. But we really need to work more about, my officer is here, Vyas madam is here around with all of us, and she's really doing a fantastic job as far as protecting the children and their rights is concerned. But a lot needs to be done more, and that is why we thought of inviting everybody, and we could have like what we are not as clear with our policies as far as the Kerala police is doing. We are of course talking to the Home Ministry and formulating policies, and we need to do a lot about it. We need to do really a lot about it. Like commissions are there, but my Child Commission needs a lot of development, and in the near future, we will of course strengthen the commission more from what it is today.
Thank you, ma'am. There was also a question on awareness programs. If the government was taking proactive steps to do awareness programs amongst parents and children?
Yes, absolutely. We are working in hands with the UNICEF to a large extent, and UNICEF is helping us. We do fall short of funds because most of our funds go into providing fortified nutrients, and then we fall short of funds to work uh, in this for the awareness is concerned. But of course, with the help of UNICEF, we are able to uh, specify a lot of the gap, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We need to do more in it.
Also, ma'am, post the COVID situation, is the government, what are the plans the government is taking to prioritize the tackling of online crimes, keeping the COVID situation in mind?
You must be knowing that the Chief Minister of my state has announced a helpline, and as with him, like we've given the 100 number as the helpline during the COVID. It was initially only for the other crimes and the police, but now the Chief Minister has announced that 100 would be handling even the domestic violence and the abuse of the children. And if they need to get help from the government, they can dial 100. All the police stations have been informed about the sensitivity of the problems of the lockdown. And all of you all know that during the lockdown, the domestic violence cases and the violence towards children and abuse of children and online crimes have increased a lot. So we've all become very sensitive, and but we need to learn what Kerala has done with the friendly forces. I think post-COVID, that would be a step, and I would be having a word. I think Mr. Abraham is there online, and I would really like to talk to him on detail and get his guidelines more and what all implementation is done. I think we would like to implement what Kerala is doing post-COVID.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Gigi, I have a related question to you. Um, Gigi, the question is, post-COVID phase, do you think the current frameworks, legal and technological, are adequate to handle the rising crimes? And you can answer that question from your experience internationally or even from what you know about India.
Well, I can tell you that post-COVID, I mean, these crimes, they're always ahead, right? I mean, as technology races, communications, the bad guys are always going to be ahead of the game. I think what we've done before COVID, I mean, we're raising awareness. We continue to work with the industry partners. Listen, 5 years ago, we didn't have as many partners as we do now. And again, as I keep saying, it's all about private partnership, collaborating. I can tell you that, for instance, in a lot of these companies that are based in the US, for them, it's corporate social responsibility. It's the ethical thing to do. A lot of companies are required to report content to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I think what's happening now with COVID, the reality is that child sex offenders are more time at home. And I think we need to continue to raise awareness and education, more important than ever, with parents and children, and of course, teachers. And again, as children are accessing online video games or online platforms, we need to educate those children. And I think this is an issue that's going to continue to raise as children are more and more at home.
Thanks. Thank you, Gigi. Mr. Manoj, we have a question for you, and the question is your view on inter-country cooperations as the crimes are borderless, and what proactive steps do you suggest, both nationally and for states, for inter-country cooperation? Mr. Manoj, if you are there. I think Mr. Manoj's call has dropped. I can ask Gigi if you can answer that question. What, in your view, what steps do you think states and countries can do to improve inter-country cooperation in sharing data, in sharing, in doing, detection, investigations?
Okay, I think it's a, if we look at the issue of capacity building, right, it's a two-pronged approach, right? We have the protective element and the preventive element, right? When we talk about capacity building, we need to have hotlines, reporting hotlines, child helplines, right? We need to have a statistical data, right? We need to make sure that the public is aware that there's a reporting mechanism where they can report cases of child sexual abuse, right? We need to have webinars just like these ones that we can exchange notes and we could see what other states are doing. And if they, in this case, if Kerala has a specific child sexual abuse team within the Kerala police, well, we need to learn best lessons learned, right? Best practices. That's the only way I think inter-country adaptation of this issue may be a possible step moving forward. And we also need to identify what other are there services for the victims? Are there services for the same predators? We need to understand why they offend and why they continue to offend, right? There need to be treatments for these offenders as well.
Sure. Thank you, Gigi. Hey, Satya, we had a question for you, and the question was, does Facebook or Instagram have the mechanism to liaison and sumo to report explicit content with law enforcement?
Thanks. Thanks, Matt. Of course, as Gigi has covered in his NICMIC explanation, we are bound to report all CEI to NICMIC. And as we covered earlier in a talk, that NICMIC has, which is the agency which is like a clearinghouse of all of these child exploitative imagery or all of these explicit content, as the user asks in the question. That is then shared with in India with NCRB, which is the LE agency under MHA, and which then further shares it with all the state agencies. What we need to understand is that when you talk about explicit content, it has to be controlled, it has to be encrypted, it cannot be flying around everywhere. So the reporting mechanism has to be stringent and well defined. And NICMIC provides that, and NCRB provides that, so that we don't have child safety or child exploitative CI imagery roaming around, floating around while we want to curb it. So yes, of course, to the question, we have a mechanism, well-defined mechanism, which is operational and effective.
Thank you. Mr. Sastry, there was a question for you, and the question was regarding policy. As per your experience from various domains, what would you think are the key areas that can improve current policy in addressing this crime from a India perspective? What do you think has to be done nationally?
Okay. If you look at my experience in my 1400 plus investigations I did it for the government of India as a law enforcement agencies, maybe some 10 to 12% may comes under the cyber pornographic issues, right? The policy issues, what we require is the first and the foremost is having a very good training policy, collection of evidence in the court, remember, proper collection by the law enforcement agencies at the scene of crime, and presentation of the same, remember, in the court is very important because proving the case has become a very tough and Herculean task in the courts. That's what's my observation. And many cases, remember, yes, we are unable to prove it even though we have it because there is a lot of loopholes in the collection of procedures. So we require to have a proper policy. The point number one is the standard operating procedures for collection of evidences, coordination with several agencies, and training for the law enforcement agencies. So these three are the key policies government of India should make. Second is many cases the evidence is staying out of country. That's where I said. So unfortunately, India is not a signatory of, remember, the Budapest Convention. So India, I don't know, the reason is the policymakers are supposed to take the initiative. I think Madam Seema Vyas is also a part of this. If government can take initiative and start signing it, the exchange of data will become easy, because MLAT is a very tough task to gather information in many cases. So we require to have a policy completely in the collections, training, as well as a presentation evidences in the court. That's what we are required to have a centralized policy. That's where I mentioned about India requires a centralized force called Cyber Patrol Force that currently lagging it. If you have a very good Cyber Patrol Force, I think it is going to create a very good member structure for us proactively to stop it. Need not wait till the case something happens in a reactive manner.
Sure, sir. So I had a follow-up question on that. As you may know, there was a committee that was formed in the Rajya Sabha this year that submitted a report on the subject, and basically they have suggested to look at grooming as a crime, to define grooming as a crime. So my question, sir, would be in terms of the team that you're suggesting to be formulated, wouldn't that overlap with someone like the NIA or the CBI or other departments that may be doing similar crime detection work? Second, sir, I had a question to you was in terms of interstate coordination. What do you think can be done for interstate coordination within India?
If you look at the NIA role and all that, remember, they have a clear-cut predefined. Remember, it is not related to just this type of online abuse of children, etc. Right? Point number one that I would like to make, because specifically the purpose for which the NIA has created and what type of activities NIA is performing is a completely different. And if at all there is a overlapping, then certainly the government of India can come forward and create it. You take it granted, it is not going to really overlap any of the functions of any of the centralized agencies. Point number one. The second question, if you look at, there is a lot of interstate cooperations currently happening. Like the Cyber Dome, he has mentioned various specialized people were there. Maharashtra has also created something called Mahacyber. I think it is doing a very outstanding work. And they trained more than 5,000 officers of the entire districts of every district. They identified some 50 people, something. And that 5,000 people were completely trained in the cyber crimes, how to identify cyber crime, proactively, reactively, how to collect it, how to form an FIR, what will come under the Indian Information Technology Act and all that. Yes, it is happening in nuts and bolts, but it is a time that we have to connect every state together, as you rightly mentioned it. A perfect coordination as a targeted is not happening. I think it will happen maybe in the next couple of months or a couple of years. There is no doubt about it, because awareness levels in the people, awareness levels in the part of administrators is increasing. Once they come up, remember, certainly it is not very far. It will become a reality in the next at least in the next 1 year. I'm pretty sure about it.
Thank you, sir. I think the key word is targeted, coordinated efforts. Thank you, sir. I think over the last almost 2 hours, we've had such a rich conversation. Before we end, I would like to ask my colleague Yeshudas Naidu to come and give the word of thanks, and after which we will close this webinar.
Thank you, Matthew. Honorable Minister Advocate Yashomati Thakur, Department of Women and Child Development, Shri Praveen Guge, Chairperson, Child Rights Commission, Mr. Vishal Solanki, Commissioner, Education, Ms. Seema Vyas, Member Secretary, Child Rights Commission, Maharashtra, Ms. Melissa Valavalkar, Director of Operations, IJM, distinguished speakers, and all dignitaries present here today. After an extensive discussions and deliberations, it is my honor to be delivering the vote of thanks. This webinar would not have been possible without the vision, contribution, and encouragement of many people. Firstly, I would like to thank the Honorable Minister for giving her valuable time and being present with us today. Her presence has truly inspired us to strive harder in achieving common goals. I would like to extend my gratitude towards the chairperson, members, member secretary, and entire team of the Child Rights Commission, without whom this webinar would not have been possible. I also take this time to thank Ms. Melissa and the entire team of IJM for making this webinar a reality and working through all the technological situations to get this done. A big thank you for the WCD department, their officers who are part of this webinar and their cooperation while organizing this webinar. I would like to give special thanks to our distinguished speakers and the moderator for sharing their technical expertise with us. I'm sure you all will agree that it was a very thought-provoking and very informative session that the speakers provided us today. I would like to thank the members of the judiciary, members of the WCD department, law enforcement officials, the various commissions, the Child Rights Commissions, Human Rights Commissions, and the Women's Commission who are here with us today, and also our colleagues from the civil society organizations who participated on the webinar today. We look forward to distilling the outcomes that was discussed on the webinar today, and we will be sharing a report with you soon so that we are able to secure justice for children, justice for the children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yeshudas. We have crossed our time. We just want to thank each and every one of you. Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Honorable Minister. With that, we are coming to the end of the webinar. Thank you. Namaste.